Hey, friends, welcome to another episode of the 3-2-1 Leadership Podcast with me, Pastor Jeff. It is my joy and honor to do this with you. Every episode, we have one goal. We're going to just keep growing our leadership. We're going to find the current ceiling of our leadership, and we're going to break through to find new levels of leadership that maybe we never even dreamt was possible, because we're going to just keep growing and keep breaking through, keep growing and keep breaking through. Today is part of our A to Z series, where we're talking about 7 different catalysts of leadership that matter in every stage of your leadership, but they need to grow and evolve as your team or organization evolves. So, for example, in episode 1, we talked about vision. We talked about how vision always matters when things are small, when things grow more complex, or when things get bigger. Vision always matters, but the way you handle and deliver vision needs to change and transform as things grow more complicated or as it grows larger, both within your organization or the team in the organization. Episode 2, we talked about communication. Communication is always a big deal, but the way you communicate needs to scale and grow and transform as your organization, as your team grows as well. Today we're talking about systems. Systems is a funny part in leadership. I don't like to pick on people, but I think I have a lot of picking on people examples in leadership. The thing about systems in leadership is it's actually the part of leadership that I find people most resistant to, at least up until you've experienced a certain level of leadership. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way that you're a bad leader and you don't like systems, but there's just there's a certain level of experience or complication that you learn to love systems, and up until you've pressed towards that threshold. Some people are kind of resistant to systems. A lot of people are really resistant to systems. And some of the best have said some great things about systems, though. James Clear says that you don't rise to the level of your passion or your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. A lot of my favorite leadership gurus, they talk about systems all the time. And a lot of their great content is talking to you about systems without telling you that they're talking to you about systems. If you pay really close attention, a lot of the great leadership content out there is teaching you how to do a system while they're talking to you about communication, or they're talking to you about scaling, or whatever they're doing. They're actually doing systems training with you, and so it's one of the most important things. It always matters, but it matters more and differently as your organization grows and as your team within that organization grows. What we're going to do is we're going to break this into 2 parts. The first part, we're just going to talk about the need for systems. I'm going to inspire you to be passionate about systems. If you're resistant, or if you love systems, I'm going to help you love systems. I'm going to help you love systems even more. And then in part 2, we're going to talk about how to make systems, and then list some certains that are absolutely essential for every team and every organization to some degree. And I want to start out with a confession. There was a season when my organization, our church that I lead, was very small, and I was very new to my leadership. And I had a really critical spirit towards large organizations, specifically churches, that were systematic. I viewed them inappropriately as very corporate, very impersonal. I was really a modern day Pharisee towards them, and really judgmental of how they did things. And since then, God's grown me in this topic. I thought they were flashy and entertaining people, and I had all kinds of inappropriate prejudices against these large churches. And now I have friends who are helping run organizations like this, and now I've gotten to know people who have been blessed by these ministries and organizations. As I've grown, I've realized how foolish it was to have this prejudice against them, and I actually visit them and have friends visit them and realize that when I called them impersonal, because of their systems, they are so much more personal than I was at the time when I was so judgy of them. And a lot of them probably even better at being personable and having better hospitality and things than I have now. I just moralized and villainized them for having systems when I realized that they just figured out things that I hadn't figured out yet, and were doing a way better job of the very things I was trying to do. And so I'm sharing this story with you, and I'm confessing this past foolishness of mine to let you know that I was the guy who resisted systems. And I really have, I think, a strong understanding on why it's so difficult for some people. And here's why I believe it's really difficult for some people and why it was so difficult for me. One of the reasons we resist systems early on in our leadership, or for a long time in our leadership, if what we're leading remains small, what happens is you have to move away from relationship-based leadership into systematic leadership. You have to move away from personality-based leadership into structured and disciplined leadership. What happens is when your responsibility is a little bit smaller, or your team's a little bit smaller, or your organization's a little bit smaller, or maybe it's not smaller, but it was less complex once upon a time. You could lead off of, in those seasons when it was less complicated or smaller, you could lead out of a relationship with all the people, right? You could just lead off of knowing one another. And a lot of this plays off of like our communication podcast. People were close to you. You knew them, they knew you. Your leadership could be built off relationship. In fact, you don't even have to communicate really well. They can interpret what you're saying. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They know what you mean. And information travels fast because it's small or it's simple. A lot of people are kind of working shoulder to shoulder. And so you have the same context at the same time, rather than, when things are bigger and more complicated. This person's handling a part of this project, this person's handling a different part of that project, and you don't share the same context, so you have to communicate more effectively, and you have to communicate more effectively, and it gets complicated as it grows. But up until you break through that, like you feel like you don't need as many systems, because your instincts and your relationships fill the gaps that systems automate for you. And so leadership feels personal, and the spontaneity of it all feels relational. And then the flexibility of it, it's like, yeah, look at us, we're crushing it, and we can move on a dime, and we're this flexible, awesome team, and we're leading and we're crushing it. And in those early stages, or those less complicated seasons, personality carries what the processes don't carry, and you don't need them. But the goal is for whatever you're leading to grow over time. Maybe your goals, like me, my goal is to grow a church that reaches as many people as we can possibly reach. You might have a goal of building a team that is so layered with first strings people serving and then backup people serving, and you want backups for the backups, and you want to have this dynamic layered team, or maybe you just need to increase the output of whatever your product is, or whatever it is that your group or your organization accomplishes, and at some point you need to scale. And then at that scaling point, whenever you hit that ceiling, your instinct was great, but it's just not enough anymore. You need help. In fact, I would say getting to a point where you can't escape systems, it should be a goal of your leadership. And then I would even argue with this to the people who are resistant. I know some of you love systems, but to the people who are resistant, this is really probably one of the biggest barriers to your leadership right now. And you actually have systems. It's that your systems are spontaneity and relationship, and maybe even a little bit of chaos. And that is your system. And so I'm talking about orderly, intentional systems that are refined over time. And then sometimes you outgrow them. Eventually you outgrow all of them and then replace them with new systems. And that's what I'm proposing to you today. Now, remember, my goal is to just inspire you to love systems today. And so what I'm talking about in this episode, it applies to church leadership. It applies to business leadership, applies to team leaders. It applies to parents. It applies to, content creators. It applies to everybody somehow. And for those who like to lead relationally, what I want you to understand is that systems actually help you lead more relationally over time as well. It feels like, and it's possible if you don't build the right system, but it's possible that your leadership and your systematic shift in your leadership helps you be closer to the people that you enjoy being spontaneous with, and it helps you be more predictable with them. Because what systems do is they create margin. That's one of the goals of a great system. They create margin. They're going to give you margin to focus on what actually matters. They're going to give you margin to give your best energy to the right people instead of having the wrong problems suck up all your energy. So they create barriers to preserve your energy for the right things rather than letting the wrong things steal your energy, so you're drained and don't have time for the right things. They give you margin to think ahead rather than just react. One of my staff rules is that all of my staff are required to schedule white space time, is what we call it, where they're not allowed to react to problems that they're solving. They have to dream about future things that they would aspire to, and find some new thing that we're not even doing yet, or that they are not doing yet, or that they hope to do someday. And that's a requirement, is to have a system in their schedule to just have white space rather than always react to what's lying ahead. Now, I spend a lot of my time in the volunteer sector as well, and I think good systems, especially if you're a volunteer somewhere, good systems are guardrails so that you can maximize your service and then guard your downtime. Because it's really easy as a volunteer to work full-time and then work overtime and then volunteer without good systems in place. So then you volunteer overtime and find yourself working twice as hard when you could have been working half as hard and producing twice the results. A lot of that happens through systems. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not naming any specific systems today. I'm just getting you excited about the idea of systems so that you're ready for the next episode. And so if systems create margin instead of distance, what else do they create? They create focus. So I have so many systems. I'll just give you a few examples of how they've worked out for me in some of the areas where we've kind of hinted at throughout this episode so far. I have a system for meeting people so I can be present with people. I used to just pride myself on how, I'm Mr. Flexible and I have an open door policy and everybody can come see me whenever they want. And then as my responsibility grew, I realized that letting people just come by my office and just swoop in whenever they want was actually very unkind to them. Why is that unkind to them? Because my responsibilities had grown so much that when somebody comes to my office unplanned, I'm always working on something really important. I'm never not working on something really important that impacts our entire multi-100-person organization. And so even though I love you and you're in my office and you stop by and I want to drop everything to care for you, I am very distracted while you're with me, and I am not giving you the best care or the best time. It's honestly, and it's like no matter what I do, especially with my crazy ADHD brain, I'm like, yeah, I really want to be with you, and I care about your thing, and I want to talk about all the things with you, and I want to hang out, and all those things are true. But the other thing that is true at the same time is like I also just can't wait for you to leave, because I'm trying not to lose what I was writing. And I had that note and it was beautiful. It was perfect. And I can feel it slipping away and I'm not in the zone anymore and blah, 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 blah. And so I realized that having this open door policy felt generous, but it was actually unkind because I was never giving people my full focus. And so I have a rigorous scheduling system. I have a system for rest. I work so many days per week that it's ridiculous. I'm not going to talk about that. But because I work so much, I have a system so that I'm accountable to how often I spend a weekend away with my wife and kids per year. I have a system for how often I have to go and just not be in my office and be alone with the Lord for a couple days at a time, a couple times per year, because I know I'm so likely to get wrapped up in my work that I'm not good at unplugging. So I have multiple retreats throughout the year. I have a system for that. I have a system for exercise where I do so many workouts and then I change my workout routine and I do so many workouts and then I change it again. I have a whole system for how I do that. I have a system for how I diet on and not on and off, but I diet and then I change it to keep myself motivated and interested in what I'm doing. I have a system for everything I do in life to make sure that I can always function at a high level, and it creates margin and it creates focus, 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 focus. I'm saying this because if you love systems, I want you to love it more. And I'm saying this if you resist systems and you think it leads to monotony and it's impersonal and it's very, very, corporate and I don't want to be like that. I'm saying no. It helps you be more personal. It helps you be more tuned in. It helps you be more focused, more focused, more focused. In other words, systems help you do what you love really, really well. And without a conversation like this, I don't think systems are the thing that excites most people. And most people, I love you if that's you, but most people don't wake up and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have an 8-hour system building day for my life. Let's go. That's not what happens. I think there's it's in my experience at least, there's 2 times that people build systems, and I'm going to introduce a third one. But there's 2 organic and there's 1 that's less organic. I'm going to lead you to that third one. A lot of leaders build systems to make room to grow. What happens is it's your team, it's your organization, it's your life, it's whatever. It grows until it hits a ceiling, and you can see the ceiling on the horizon, or you can see that you can feel that, hey, you're going to cap out pretty soon. And so what you do to avoid capping out, you build a system to create room to grow. For me, I shared my example of my changing my availability. I don't do drop-ins anymore. It's very rare that I do a drop-in unless it's very short list of people, like my wife and kids can stop by and see me whenever they want. They're my wife and kids. But one of the things that I did was I realized that I needed to become a better writer. And so unless I had certain days where I was unavailable to 99% of the world, including, phone calls, text messages, et cetera, I didn't have margin in my life or focus in my life that allowed me to write content that was good enough to get to that next level. So for me, I changed the system on how I write and how available I am and how focused I am, so I had room to grow. And since I've done that, I've routinely had people acknowledge, they're like, hey, you're getting better at this. And that's because of a system and obviously God's blessing on the content I do. But one of the reasons we make a system is to make room to grow. And if you feel stuck, it might just be a need to, a sign. If you feel stuck, it might be a sign that it's time to change the system. And so you say, if this is going to keep growing, something needs to change. So number 1, you make a system to make room to grow. And then number 2, a lot of people organically make a system to survive the growth. A lot of times what happens is you grew. And then you're drowning. You're drowning in whatever it was that grew. You're just treading water in it. And so you realize in order to keep this as is, you realize I need to build some systems. And maybe you didn't have a conscious mindset of saying like, hey, I'm going to build some awesome system to keep this going. You just organically built a system and you called it, I don't know, you called it your follow-up strategy update. You called it changing your schedule. You called it, having a better sleep schedule or whatever. But a lot of those things were actually you designing new systems for your life. And you did it to survive the growth of your life or your team or your organization. And so those are the two reasons I think people most organically create systems. Number one, to make room to grow. Number two, to survive the growth they've experienced. I want to introduce a third option. I just want to encourage you, just build systems, be a system building machine, because it will make you a great leader. I shared the quote earlier from James Clear. You fall to the level of your systems. So if your systems are here, you put rise high with your systems so you don't fall very far. Fall to the level of your systems. You can watch my hands as I do this. Don't fall to the level of your systems. Raise your systems so that you can just fall to the level of your systems. Fall to your level of systems. It's what great leaders do. It's just systems. And I want to be charitable in this conversation. The thing that I've learned about systems is it's easier said than done. Some people are just not great systems builders. That might be you. I'll talk about this more in the next episode, hopefully. But if you're not a great systems builder, try to have a buddy or somebody on your team or whoever that's great at building systems, because you might be a great leader and you might be good at running systems that someone else builds. But have some sort of person or tool or resource in your life that helps you do that, and be direct with them. Be like, hey, can you help me build a system? In Restore Church, where I lead, we have a role called the church manager, who is a systems design master. And part of her job is to be available to all of our different team leaders to help them refine their systems or find new systems to help them in their leadership. So you might just need a battle buddy is what we could call it for some of my military friends out there to just help you do the system stuff. Now it's like systems are our best friend here at the leadership level of Restore Church. They're our best friend. And we thank God greatly for the systems we enjoy. And so these are some reasons that I hope you love systems. I want to keep this one shorter and sweeter. I don't know what the timestamp is right now, but I hope you love systems. I would love it if you would drop a comment on like what your thoughts on systems are after listening to this episode. Get ready for part 2 when we talk about how to build some systems, and some systems that you absolutely need on every team, every organization, that are easy to overlook. And last but not least, you are growing in your leadership. And I believe that Jesus was and is the best leader of all time. And so if you're growing in your leadership, there's a chance that you might actually be growing to be a little bit more like Jesus, whether you realized it or not. And so I hope that this doesn't just make you a great leader. I hope it grows you closer to Christ in some way, shape, or form. And that's the dream of this podcast as we find that ceiling, break through it. Love you guys. I'll see you soon for part 2.